Hello everyone. In this video we are going to focus on the growth and reproduction of plants. But before doing that, let's step backward and see the general characteristics of living organisms. So living organisms are characterized by evolutionary adaptation, the response to environment, reproduction, growth and development, and energy processing, regulation, and order. And to connect that with what we have been doing the last few videos, so we started with evolutionary adaptation of plants, how the plants have evolutionary adapted to colonize the land, and we have seen the different types of plants and the adaptations happening in each type. Then in the coming video we are going to focus on the reproduction and growth and development. Then we will touch also some of the concepts of the order, so the different structures of the plants, like a bit of anatomy of the plant and how these organs are ordered and their functions. So as you know, the plant will germinate from the seed. The seed can stay dormant for many years. I will show you in the next slide that it can stay dormant for like even thousands of years. And by dormancy we mean having low metabolic activities and no growth. So as you know, that there are reserved nutrients within the seed, so the embryo will not consume these nutrients because of that dormancy, and that increases the chances that germination will happen at an advantageous time. So how the seed will know that the conditions have changed, and how it will know that it should now break the dormancy because the advantageous time is already there. It will know it usually depending on environmental cues. So for example, if the seed is germinating in an area with no sunlight and all of a sudden these conditions have changed, so by having like sensory molecules for the light, so light can be used as a cue for the environmental change, or it can be cues related to temperature, so availability of suitable temperature or water resources. All of these cues can give the signal for breaking the dormancy. There are many studies showing that all seeds still are capable of germination, and some of these studies goes back to 2,000 years ago. Even some others claim that seeds from the ancient Egyptians, so we are talking about 3,000 or 4,000 years old, these seeds still are capable of germination. I have even found this in the National Geographic website that seeds going back to 32,000 years old, they are used to bring the plant back to life. So regardless of the number of years, the conclusion is that seeds that are even thousands of years old still are capable of germination and breaking that dormancy. So what will happen in the germination of the seed and the seedling development? What will happen is that the first step is imbibition, which is the uptake of water. So the seed will absorb the water, so the seed will expand. This will initiate the activity of enzymes. These enzymes will break down the starch and the food reservoirs, and then the first part that will start to emerge is the radicle. So the radicle is the embryonic root, and then following the radicle, the shoot tip will break the soil surface. So in the next two slides we are going to apply these general rules for both the eudicots and the monocots. So in case of the eudicots, the first thing, as we said, is the radicle, and then regarding the shoot part, the first part that will appear from the shoot is a hook. This hook will form the hypocotyle, and this hypocotyle will grow pushing the hook above the ground. So if we will see it here, as you can see, the first thing is the radicle. The radicle will appear first growing down into the soil. Then we have this hook. This hook will grow into the hypocotyle. This hypocotyle will break the soil upward, and then the rest of the plant will grow to the upside, I mean the shoot part, and then it will start to grow. So why the hypocotyle is the first part? Imagine that this is like pushing something with your elbow. So the elbow is like tough more than your fingers. So if you don't want your fingers to be hurt, using the elbow is a better way. And with the same idea, the hypocotyle is more resistant or more tough than the other tissues. So it's the first part pushing up through the ground, then the other parts follow the hypocotyle, and as you can see, it starts to grow. And once we have the foliage leaves, these like true leaves, once we have these foliage leaves which are capable now of photosynthesis, then the seed leaves, which are the cotyledon, they start to shrink and shrivel and fall down. Moving on to the monocots. So in monocots like maize or grass, what we will see, again, the same thing, the radicle will start first, but regarding the shoot part, the first part that will appear is the coleoptile. So the coleoptile is the first part, and this will grow to the upward direction, like straight way up, and we will have the foliage leaves appearing later on. One thing to notice here, we will mention this later, but let's mention this in this figure, that the foliage leaves in the monocots, they are directly attached to the stem. You will notice this if you compare it with you will notice this if you compare it with the foliage leaves in the eudicots, where we have what is called as petioles. So the leaves are not directly attached to the stem, but they are attached to through these petioles. These petioles are absent in the monocots, where the leaves are directly attached to the stem. The next slides we are going to discuss the reproduction of plants, and starting with this topic, we can say that plants reproduce sexually and asexually. So some plants reproduce sexually, some others asexually, or even both. And we have seen the sexual reproduction through the previous cell cycles, and how we are talking about sperms and eggs and all of that. So sexual reproduction, the importance of that is that the offsprings are genetically different from the parents. So you are mixing the gene pool, and this is advantageous from one point of view. So what is the advantage of having a sexual reproduction? Asexual reproduction will result in a clone of genetically identical organisms. Again, what is the advantage of that? The advantage of that is, number one, it is faster. The plants don't need to search for a mate, giving them the sperm or the eggs. And number two, if the plant has desirable features, they are not going to lose this feature, but actually they are going to create a clone that is exactly or genetically identical to the parent plant. Thus, they are maintaining these desirable features. So this is the advantage of the asexual reproduction. So we are not going into details about the mechanisms of asexual reproduction, but what I want you to know that this asexual reproduction takes place through vegetative propagation. This can happen naturally, and here we have some examples. We will go through the bulbs, the tubers, and the runners. Also, there are rhizomes. So this happens naturally in plants, and also it can happen artificially. So we as human can induce this asexual reproduction through many methods like cutting, layering, and grafting. So let's see what is asexual reproduction, some examples of asexual reproduction. So in this example, we are dealing with the runner. If you remember, runners are natural example of asexual reproduction. So some plants, they have runner stems, so the stem runs like parallel to the ground or above the ground, like that. So what will happen, this stem will start to give, and this root will start to grow like that, giving the plant, and the stem will run parallel to the ground, and then it will start again, the root will develop again, giving another plant. So this plant is identical to this one because both of them, they are the product of vegetative propagation. They are produced from the same plant through the process of mitosis, and because of that, it is maintaining the genetic structure, and it is considered as asexual reproduction. We see this type in the wild strawberry. Then moving to another type of asexual reproduction, we can see this in the onion bulb. So the onion is actually a modified root. So this is a root, and if you cut a chunk of this root and you start to germinate it, it will give rise to the onion plant. So here again, using the same or using a part from the parent plant to give rise to a new plant, this is asexual reproduction. Then we have the tuber. So the tuber is actually exemplified by that is the potato. So the potato is actually a modified stem. This is an underground stem. It grows under the ground like that, and we see the buds or the eyes in the potato. So these are the buds or the eyes. And if you again cut chunks of the potato, and then you put it in another place, it will grow into a potato plant if this chunk is containing the eye or the buds. So again, this is an example of asexual reproduction. So that's what I was talking about. Here is the potato, and here you have the eye buds, and this can germinate to a new plant. So these are examples of asexual reproduction, and there are many other examples shown here in this figure, but again, it is the same idea, taking part of the plant and germinating it to give another plant from the original organism. Moving on, we will mention that even you can clone plants in the test tube, and this is done in vitro. So you use this technique to create a clone or a copy of a novel plant variety. Here is an example. If you have this figure showing undifferentiated carrot cells, and then after differentiation it has differentiated into the plant like that. You can even create a transgenic plant. So transgenic plant means that this plant has genes from another organisms, and this is possible because of the universality of the genetic code. So you can take a gene giving a desirable feature from one organism, whether it is plant or not, and then insert it in the plant to give you the transgenic version of that plant. This is something we highlighted in a previous video, but it is relevant to mention it here again, that modern plants that we see are actually, most of them, they are genetically engineered. So in this figure, this corn, and this is the ancestor of the corn, and as you can see, there is a huge difference between the ancestor and the modern corn in terms of the size of the seeds and the nutrients stored in each one of them, and that's how breeders improve their plants to satisfy the increasing needs of the consumers. So using this one wouldn't be very suitable to provide the nutritional requirements of the increasing number of population.